Well, hi, thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed the episode. I guess start by telling me, where did the idea come from?
Sure. Well, we have been batting around the idea of an artist killer since like day one of our development room. It was something that JJ was excited about, Jake was excited about. Those of us who were part of that mini room were all like, "Oh, this would be so cool!" I think the idea of a killer that creates these very visually arresting tableaus that are both disgusting and terrifying, but also really kind of beautiful. I think that was very captivating to us from day one. We couldn't quite crack it back then when we were sort of doing our initial few episodes to try and get the green light from NBC. But it was something we kept on the back burner. We're like, we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this. We'll figure this out. And then it wasn't until we were deep in production on season one, and we're starting to get to this sort of the last half that it finally came together, and it was really like it was a matter of finding that thing that that kind of solidified the artist's identity and what they did in the past that was unique to them. And it really came from, you know, I have a huge love of Greek mythology, and I just sort of like, well, artists. What about the muses? The nine muses from Greek mythology. They each, sort of corner different types of art. What if the killer is murdering people to honor these different art forms and inspire itself? And that really coalesced everything and gave the story momentum and allowed for this notion of like a project that was incomplete. So this notion of like an artist who's like honoring other artists in this really horrific way kind of sort of immortalize them and their craft and how good they were at this thing by killing them and like displaying them in this awful way. That again is hard to look at, but also you kind of can't resist it. That sort of became the inspiration for like who this person was in the past, and then taking it to sort of the next level of twist was the idea that, well, we usually know who the killer is right off the bat, and the idea is sort of like, how do we get ahead of them? What happened to them? How are they different now? And how do we find them out in the real world and stop them before they murder lots of people? We like the idea that we have the original killer and they never leave custody, and we get to talk to them this whole episode and try and figure out who their protege is. And we have the away team that's boots on the ground, uncovering sort of one piece of the puzzle, and then we have our team of profilers, Bex and Odell, who we know were really, really effective in the past, but we've never seen them really have to go head to head with a killer together as a team of profilers. And we get to do that in this episode, which is so delightful. And then you have, sort of again the story of the monster, which we always love to tell, which is, the the the, the killer's point of view and seeing
Right.
the awful things that they're doing as they're sort of bringing together the final stages of this unfinished art project, and how dangerous that's going to be. So it allowed us to play thematically, in multiple storylines. This is sort of idea of master and protege, student, teacher, and how juicy that dynamic can be, and allowed our killer in captivity, our sort of be like a Hannibal Lecter-ish type uh, interviewee, who gets to really kind of put the heads of these profilers and try to get the better of them, and have our profilers have to kind of step back and reevaluate and kind of ultimately get the better of this person by sort of playing their game against them.
How much of the design was like, I guess, written out in the script versus the art department when they created the bodies? I guess is the best way to say it.
Oh my gosh, I'd say ultimately it was a one collaboration. Like there were versions of these tableaus that David and I wrote into the script. And then it was really when we had our director come on board, Nicole Rubio. She crushed this episode. We worked very closely with our art department. A lot of it was sort of like, what can be done, because we had written some very spectacular imagery. And then it was sort of like, what can we realistically do? And particularly that opening one, which I don't want to give too much away, that was the most challenging rig to set up. But it required every single department to come together to say, what's the most magnificent version of this we can do, and how we do it safely and in our budget and in a timely manner. And it man, we just planned every single step of the way, but it required every single department head to be in these incredibly long meetings. And we had all these, like, we had used puppets and we had
Yeah.
strings on these puppets to sort of be like, this is maybe the kind of concept, and then how do we do this safely, how do we create this harness, how do we get the blood flow, how do we do, like, and it was just just a wonderful coming together of everybody's you know best work, I think. And the end result was just jaw dropping when we saw it finally come
Yeah.
together, and we had this marvelous crane shots moving around this body. Everyone was just floored. We were all just like gawking and looking at each other like, so that one obviously like required so much work. But then it was like, we tell a story, in photographs. So we have a lot of these photographs that we also had to produce
Yeah.
of, saying like, this is what she did in the past. And like, that also was like, okay, I worked very closely with the art department of like, maybe we have a novelist, maybe we have, a comedian, maybe we have and what can we do to that? And then they sort of came in with some great concepts of, well, what if maybe we could do this, maybe we could do this, maybe we do this. And then it was a matter of Nicole and myself whittling down what we loved, what we could like ratchet up, and what we could ultimately produce in a timely fashion. And it all just came together so wonderfully. But it was the pipe dream of a writer that then had to turn into something tangible and real. And our crew, man, they're incredible, and they made these things a reality.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you said safety. I didn't know for sure if it was a real person. I was gonna ask you that, but I guess that answers my question. If you harnessed him up there, that's
It
great.
was a real person. She was alive, and man, she was such a good sport.
I
But
would have to believe
ultimately
that.
she was the one controlling the rig. She was like, left leg higher, right leg higher. Like, she was controlling like, one moved anything unless she told them explicitly, like, I can move my hand further, I can move my hand further. Oh, that's it, I can't move. It was just
Wow.
her
Yeah,
being
that's
such a
crazy.
pro. Yeah.
Talk about casting Janet Kidder.
Oh man, she blew us away. We did a pretty, we cast um a pretty wide net when we were initially going, and she very early on. I mean, Janet, I love her. She worked on Arrow, so I knew of her work, from then. But she's got just such a wide breadth of experience, and she's so talented. And when we saw her audition very early on, we were all like, ooh, like, she just really brought a wonderful spark to this personality, and just was working on so many different levels, and you could see it in her eyes and the depth of it. And she just embodied this malicious person, and was clearly a lot of fun with it. But she really worked very intensely to make sure that like every scene was operating on all those different levels of planning that this woman had carefully sort of crafted out for this for the way she wanted these things to. And Janet was marvelous. She was a wonderful partner, and she completely blew it out of the water.
Awesome. I know we're almost out of time, but quickly, I was going to ask about the scene at the end. I mean, it seems like there's now an extra piece to these people that are being experimented on, and the fact that they're taking something from her. Is there anything you can tease at all about that and what's to come in that aspect
Oh
of?
man, I mean, I'm gonna dive more into that in these last few episodes. I think there are levels of this conspiracy that are starting to finally uh, come into better light in these last few episodes, and all of it will it's all sort of leading up to a pretty jaw-dropping revelation that ends up being quite personal for our cast, and so I don't want to ruin that. But yeah, this piece of property that's reclaimed at the end of this episode is certainly a pivotal little nugget in our larger story of the conspiracy behind the pit and what they were making down there and what they were using these people for.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Still waiting for to see the finale. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye bye.